Question about web development, specifically no code static websites with tilde or similar bundles without knowing much web design in terms of color combination typography. So the question is generally about whether, I think there is a chance at getting regular freelance gigs making websites for people. And the only thing I can do is share my experience here. I think a lot of people, and actually, I've mentored a lot of people. In particular, I talked about one woman who thought that she wanted to be a web designer and she was just going to make websites on the side. And there are a number of considerations about this on the side thing, and I'm just going to jump right in. This is going to be a longer video than you probably want. I'm going to label it as extra in the beginner boost materials because it's specifically about one career path. And it's directly about my experience with it. And what I think. And there are many, many other people that are employed doing this kind of work today that are probably better sources of information about this. So I'm just one data point. Okay. Don't, take my experience as gospel here, but I do want to share you this. So the first thing I need to tell you is that my first official gig was as a web developer. I learned HTML, taught it to myself, and became the webmaster and the director of sales for FiberNet back in '86. They later had to lay us off because there was no demand for internet services in 1995 or something. And I got to take my computer, but other than that, I had nothing to show for it. And I moved up to Portland, Oregon, got a job for Teleport there, became their web person, did a lot of the front end stuff, and then got into the back end stuff, and that got me. I became the Common Gateway Interface CGI guy and Perl and all that. So that you have to know that history. And then I got headhunted from there into Nike, became Nike's internal SwooshNet webmaster, and then got brought over to Nike.com to do all of that in 2000 or so. And then IBM had to hand me out of there to do Java development for something. So that's a very brief summary of my career arc. And the reason I needed to tell you that is because during that career arc, there was a couple moments where creating websites was valuable, but overall turns out to be a bust. And I really want to warn you about this. So becoming a freelance web designer is a bad idea to me. I think it's a horrible idea. I probably should have started out by saying that, but I'm going to tell it to you now. And I'm going to tell you why, because I thought it was a good idea too. There was only a couple moments in history where I think it might have been a good idea. And one of those, the funnier instance of that. So while I was working at Teleport, I had a side gig, and I have lots of funny stories about that, including the time when I was Mormon and the web mistress, she called herself, Lynn. God, I miss Lynn, who hired me and everything. She gave me this freelance gig to do this stripper's porn site. I'll never forget. They thought it was funny because I was just, I had young kids at home. I was a Mormon. I'd been on a Mormon mission. I was very straight laced. I was probably, I was working in Portland, Oregon. If you know Oregon, it's very liberal, right? And Lynn gave my name to this person who called in to do some ad hoc design to do web development. So this video is about freelance web development. I promise I'm going to tell you why I think it's a bad idea, but this is kind of a fun story. So she they thought it would be hilarious to get this, to have this woman commit. So sure enough, I'm sitting, in our little cubicle space, looking across the buildings that were at Wyden and Kennedy across the way, if you know Portland, and right next to the window there. And I'll never forget the door opening, and this porn star basically walking through the door and say, "Hey, is Rob here? I'm looking for Rob." And I looked up from my keyboard and my Perl that I was coding on, and I was like, "Oh, damn." She came over. She goes, "Hi," and she was like really, really friendly. She was like really touchy and feely and everything. And my manager and Lynn and I forget her name, the girl that worked more on the design side, they were laughing their asses off. They were over there just like busting on the gut. And I was like this kind of like straight laced, Mormon with his khakis on, trying to talk to this woman about what she wanted. Sorry for the ad, just the way I can break. So then she started like telling me what she wanted, and she goes, "Well, I like this site and this site and this site," and she was like showing me these like totally explicit websites. And I was trying to decide, do I take this account or not? I was like totally ethically conflicted, and I talked to her, I gave her her options to try to be really professional. And she was like, well, what do you think of this one? And I'm like, oh my God. I mean, I was like sweating. I was like totally sweating. And I mean, I was just losing it. It was so much fun for them. But I was trying to keep it together, but I was like, I had like so many emotions going on at the same time. Oh God, it was so funny. And then she finally left, I said, well, let me know. Here's my card and whatever. And so she went out, and the door shut, and the room they just started roaring in laughter because they thought it was so funny. We're gonna give the Mormon the freelance porn site, and um, in hindsight, it probably would have been a good job. I probably would have made a lot of money on that gig. So that gets me to the real question here. Why should you not take porn site? No. Why should you not take website gigs? And I got to tell you another story about this that's much less fun, but it's more real. It's kind of a sad one. And uh, so while I was doing the ad hoc thing on the side, I took on a number of jobs. And one of the jobs that I took on, so there's two other jobs I want to tell you about. So one of the jobs I took on, there's three jobs that I took on actually. One of them was I made this API that linked into the bank exchange, and they continued to say how cool it was. But the thing about that particular job was it was basically an app. So I made an app, and I busted that out and made 1,000 or something on it, and then I gave it to them, and then that they were able to run the code. Okay, and that's important because there was a deliverable, and I was out. Unless they wanted to make any changes to that app, it was a currency exchange app, and it just downloaded a tab file from the bank's international bank, and then it just you know chopped it up and made a nice pretty ticker tape, not ticker tape, sort of back then, there was no, we didn't even have flash, so it was just a cool way of showing the currency exchange, and people were going there, and it was pushing a lot of bandwidth to that particular company's site. And they, to this day, I mean, several years after that, they're like, we are so happy with your work you did on this one particular project, right? Now, if you could make all of your jobs that in the web world, it would be awesome. The problem is that you really can't do that. When you start going into the freelance market, you are in a totally, totally different arena. And you're also competing directly against organizations that have an entire team of web developers. And so obviously you're going to be at a disadvantage. No matter how good your reputation is, you're going to have a problem. There's two other stories of accounts that I took on while I was doing freelance. Another one, and by the way, I had a full-time job to pay the bills. There's no way I could have ever supported myself and my two kids and my family and my wife with that freelance. That's insane. That would be totally insane. There's no way. But that was like extra money on the side, and even that was hard. So another job that I took on was for a sort of a bigger company, and they just wanted a baseline website. And nobody had discovered a tool called Front Page. I know I'm dating myself here, but there was a thing from Microsoft called Front Page, and if your institution, your internet service provider, installed certain plugins which were riddled with security holes, I don't even want to go down that path. Then anybody could use Front Page from Microsoft, and they could publish their own website. Now, I had already made something called Teleport Web Weaver, which you can still go look up. It was a big deal. It was on buses and stuff as advertising, and because it allowed any of the thousands of Teleport people to have a website automatically by filling out some things and having. I mean, back in the 90s, this was a big deal. There's a point. The point is that it was so easy to turn around a website. That I could have non-technical people do it. In fact, I didn't have any time because I had a job, and I was commuting to downtown and everything. And so I had my wife at the time, even though she had toddlers, she was able to use Front Page and develop this company's website, and she did all the work. And we bought new vinyl windows for our entire house that we were renovating from her making a website with Front Page, because there was a tiny little window where the world had not realized how easy it was to make a website, and they still thought it was a bunch of hardcore programming and everything, and it was for a long time. But they had not figured this out. So my wife busted out this website in like a weekend, and I went to I handed over the website to the guy. I said, here's the website I made for you, and we bought new vinyl windows for our house out of it. Now that's an extreme exception to the rule. And then the last one, and this was the last time I ever did any freelance work. Um, there was this amazing real estate project that these people wanted, and they took me out to lunch, and they had all of their specs out. They had designers drawing. It was a really high end project, and I was like, damn, this is a fantastic project. There's going to be a lot of back end, coding and API development, and they had designers on to do the front end of it, and I really, really wanted to do it, and I made a bid for how much money to be paid, and everything, and then life happened, and there was just no way I was going to be able to put in the time, even if I had worked full time on it. It was a big contract, and I had to sit around. I mean, after about a month, I just wasn't happening. There's no way I was going to find the time for it, and I had to go back to them and I had to tell them, I'm sorry, I cannot execute on this. I don't have enough time. And they were pissed. I mean, they were pissed. That whole thing about reputation I talk about in another video? The whole Malcolm Reynolds gets it done. It's all about the reputation. My reputation just went, it was in the toilet. And thank God, I mean, the buzz around town for everybody else was that I was the person to go to get this web stuff done. But when I couldn't do that project because I had other things and I'd let them down after they bought me lunch and everything, I said, look, I'm happy to pay you back for this or that and give you your deposit back, but there's just no way I can do this. There's just no way. My reputation went in the toilet. And it was at that part that I realized that taking on freelance work was a bad idea. And ever since then, anytime that freelance web work in particular might come my way, usually what I did, and there's one other job I did after that, after several years after that, when I was divorced, there's a good friend of mine who had helped me get into teaching, and they had to they had been asked to create a website for their homeowners association. And I had a choice. I could either teach this person how to make and manage their own, website, or I could take it on and have an infinite responsibility to maintain it and keep it going. And this is probably the most important part of the video, even though it's like way at the end, because 9 times out of 10, when someone is going to pay you to do a freelance gig, that what they're expecting from you is different than what you are thinking you're going to do. And almost always, if you are a person with a soul, you're going to want to think of the needs of the person hiring you instead of your own needs. And I know a lot of people who have done freelance web development, and they enter into it as if they're going to have an ongoing relationship with the person. And I can tell you, I can promise you, whether you have a good relationship with that person or a bad one, you don't even know them, they will always expect more from you than you can deliver. They will expect you to do more. They won't value how much you're worth because they don't know. It's not that they're bad people. They just don't know. They don't get how much work it takes to do the web stuff. And sometimes that works to your advantage, like when I bought the vinyl windows, because it's a lot easier than what they think it is to be. And then you're also kind of ethically conflicted because it is so freaking easy and you can turn it around, but that's still the going rate. So you're constantly asking yourself, am I, making the money? And you got this dynamic going on, and all of a sudden they want to make a change, and they think that their support contract with you, it's not written down anywhere. They think that they can just send you something that they want and that you're going to put it on. Right. And the answer is you're not going to have time to do that. Even if you're a full-time employee, you've only got so many customers that you can take on, and they're going to want immediate response from you. So unless you have a service level agreement and you get into all of the stuff that these bigger companies do, because they have been in business with these organizations, these bigger organizations that have been, meeting the needs of people to do web development and things like that, they have been doing this forever. So they have lawyers who help them write service level agreements. They have entire people dedicated to setting the price cost analysis correctly. They have all the people that are taking care of all that business side of it. So you can be stuck doing websites and making money. The naive failure that a lot of people who want to do independent websites and freelancing have is that they think that it's going to be, oh, I'm just going to be writing a bunch of HTML. I'm going to deliver a website. I'm going to get paid, and I'm going to go on. And that is the exception to the rule. That does happen. There was that currency converter project that I did that was very clean cut, had very precise end date, in terms of like what I was delivering, and I delivered and I got the money. If the thing was to ever break down, they'd have to sign a new contract with me to go fix it. But the expectation was, you're going to support this on your own. I'm just going to give you it. So if you're going to even consider the freelance thing, you have to be so clear about what it is you're delivering. Are they paying you for an ongoing support agreement for their website, so that when they have to make a typo here, or they're going to change this over here, right? And I can tell you, I mean, there's somebody that I know right now who is going through this exact problem, because they have this supposed agreement with a group that won't even update their web pages at all, right? They don't do anything. So this homeowners association situation is a perfect example of how you can make money and help. So what I told them from the very beginning, as I asked them around, I said, what do you want? What is your goal? Are you going to be the one maintaining it, or do you want me to maintain it? Do you want to pay me or somebody else to maintain it? And they said, well, we don't have a big budget, so I mean, if it's possible, I'd like to be able to maintain it. So what was the answer for this person? Did I want to make a really kick-ass REST API driven website and write all the customized code? Yeah, I did, but that was not the right answer for that person. The right answer for that person was to teach them WordPress. And so I made their initial WordPress site. We agreed on a cost for me to do the initial WordPress site, and then to train her about how to update the WordPress site and make minor changes to it, and show her where to go to get her own learning. But then there was a very precise delivery date, and there was an expectation. And I made technical decisions about what was going to go into that site based on the person who's going to be maintaining it. And I guarantee you, there are a lot of freelancers who do not care about that stuff. I cannot tell you how many times I've had to pick up the pieces from crappy decision made by somebody who put something out there, and they got their money and they ran, and they didn't really care about the ongoing maintenance and their customers' ability to maintain the thing that they had just delivered. I run into this constantly. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, if you even try to do the freelance gig thing and you do that, you're a bad person. If you're taking advantage of them and you're just getting their money and going, it's their problem after that, and you pick all the technology that you want to learn because it's fun and it's not necessarily the easiest for them to maintain, you're a bad person, and you will get a bad reputation. You'll get a reputation as that person who just likes to play around with the latest trendy things and doesn't care about their customers and their solutions. And that is that is really, really bad. Or worse, you'll go into it thinking that you can do it and be unable to deliver, and then you get your reputation go down as well, because you can't deliver on with something you promised. That happened to me, even though I meant I wanted to do everything I had the best of faith going into it. So whether you want to do it or you're just a horrible person, you just want to to get their money and go, those two things. But most of you are going to want to train them, and so let's think of that in terms of a career. So given those stories, there's no career. There is literally no future in freelance website design, period. In fact, you would probably make more money learning how to train other people to create static websites using Tilda or similar builders or something like that than you would doing it, because it's more, the bar is so low for website creation and this is why WordPress is still dominant. 60% of the internet is still WordPress. I don't particularly like it. It's got vulnerabilities. It's PHP. It's got things, but it doesn't matter, because that is the right solution for most people. My wife maintains her own website. I could make her website for her. She won't let me touch it, and I don't blame her. I'm like, let's not do that. She goes, I just want to be able to maintain it myself. I'm like, okay. I said, you could just learn Markdown and generate. She goes, yeah, but then I can't do it. I'd have to learn blah blah blah. So she has her own website. She completely manages her own website by herself. She uses Squarespace. She moves things around. So the web the particular, let's get very specific here. The freelance web developer career has no future. It has no future. I'm telling you, web applications developer, I might have a future, right? Being able to create an app and to even, kind of in a startup scenario, create a web app and then monetize that and maybe get money from Silicon Valley for it. That does have a career. I mean, obviously, there's a lot of people that use that as a career. But the whole freelance make a website for random customers out there, particularly non-technical people, that has no future. And if you try to do that, you will crash and burn. You will, because you're either going to have a mismatched expectation setting with the people that are doing it, or you're going to be a glorified, PHP WordPress person because you're doing it, you're making stuff that you want to hand off. In any of those cases, that is not a sustainable career path, especially if you want to get good and improve. Your better option in the web development world is to find one of these organizations that specializes in delivering for larger organizations that have budgets, that have lawyers that can sign off on a thing, that have benefits. So just being a freelancer in today's world is a hard thing. I can't recommend it. I haven't gone through skill set. That is a very, very long video. I told a lot of stories in there. But I want to tell you that, I still do websites on occasion for people, to get them started. I did one for Bella Love, which is actually, it's a funny story. I put bringing the awesome out in local art, and it was a joke. And I put it in the PHP template that we found that they liked, and they ended up keeping that. And I was like, that was supposed to be a joke. It's too cliche. You would never want that in there. That's totally silly. And they're like, no, that sounds great. And they kept it. They kept it. And they took the whole color scheme and everything. And I got them going. They never really paid me for that, by the way. We just did it for fun. And the thing that sucked about that is that then they kept coming back at me. Okay, can you make this little change? Can you make this little change? And I was like, you didn't pay me for it originally. And then, it's just not sustainable, my friends. If you need to find an organization that's going to pay your bills, and that organization can, unless you're going to go the startup route, in which case you're looking at building a web app. You're not building out no code static websites for people. There, and that includes design, by the way. So I'll end the video here. So web design is not necessarily the same thing as web applications development. Web design. And you can go, I'll cite Jennifer here, who wrote, the web design O'Reilly book, Learning Web Design, which I highly recommend. It's still really good, even though it's somewhat dated. There's an entire branch of web design that they take great pride in not using any JavaScript at all. Just CSS and just HTML, and they focus on things like typography and color theory, and these are designers, right? And those designer skills are still very, really valid. And most of those designers end up working for a design firm, a web design firm, or they're on a team that's doing delivery. And then they, like the group that I, like when I was at Teleport, Lynn was the web designer. Actually, the other girl, they were the designers. And then they would want something cool to happen. And then they would talk to me. Back then, it had to be all on the back end, so they would come talk to me. And I didn't care about the design. I like good design, but I didn't care about messing with that. They would say, we want this to do this. And I'm like, okay, I'm on it. And then I would go make the magic happen, whether that was a Perl script or an animated GIF or whatever. I would do that thing and deliver that. But we were a team. And so, the accounts, the larger accounts that came to the entire company, they would come to us, and then we would do it, or we would do it for the company. And that's where the work is. The work in web design is, and that kind of work is at, Netflix has web design work. They also have, a ton of like interactions, interface design, web applications design and development is a solid career path. I mean, you can go look on the Bureau of Labor Statistics and see it. That is a very solid career path. Websites, freelance websites for the random person that you might find out there, bad idea. And that's a long way to say that, but I really, there's a couple of takeaways from this. And the main takeaway is that freelance is not sustainable for most people. It's not. freelance technical work is almost never sustainable. And I know that there are people out there that are doing it all the time. They constantly love telling me that how awesome they are, and they have built up a reputation. They have people coming at them all the time for work, and that's awesome. But that is the exception. Most freelance tech work is very, very hard, and the people that includes people that are trying to do startup stuff. People that are doing startup stuff are usually getting ready to pitch and get bought out. It's totally separate career path. I am not qualified to talk about that career path at all. I don't have any desire to ever follow that career path. I think the main thing you should do is you should get the skills that you want and work for a medium to big size company. I worked for several small companies and it sucked because they couldn't pay enough, and then they one of them went under, the other one got bought out, and we made stock of that. So if you're looking for a sustainable long term career, chances are you're going to end up working for one of the bigger companies out there. And in my estimation, that's a safer route to go. They still need the same skills, but it's up to you. Try to decide. But working for yourself is a bad idea in web design. There, I said it. Now here comes the hate. I'm going to get lots of hate about that.